The lamp in the corner casts everything in amber, the kind of light that makes ordinary moments feel suspended in time. The television murmurs something meaningless into the room, voices from a late-night talk show that neither of us has been listening to for the past hour. The couch beneath us has grown warm from our bodies, the leather softened by years of use, and I can feel every shift Andre makes beside me, every quiet breath that moves his chest up and down. We have been sitting like this for longer than friends usually do. Close enough that our knees brush when one of us adjusts position. Close enough that I can smell the detergent on his shirt and the faint trace of cologne he wore to work this morning. It is past midnight now, and the apartment feels smaller in the darkness beyond the lamp's reach, as though the walls have drawn closer around us. Andre is staring at the television, but his eyes are unfocused, distant. I know him well enough to recognize the signs of internal struggle, the way his jaw tightens when he is wrestling with something he cannot quite name. His hands rest on his thighs, fingers occasionally drumming a restless rhythm against the denim of his jeans. There is tension in his shoulders, in the careful way he holds himself just slightly turned toward me, but not quite facing me. I should move. I know I should create distance, should laugh, and make some joke about how late it has gotten, should stand up and stretch and suggest we call a night. Instead, I remain exactly where I am, drawn by the gravity of whatever is building between us in this dim room. The silence stretches until it becomes almost tangible, a presence unto itself. I can hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of traffic passing by outside, but these noises feel like they belong to another world entirely. Here, in this pool of warm light, there is only the two of us and the weight of things we have never said aloud. Andre shifts again, and this time his knee presses more firmly against mine. The contact sends a jolt through me that I try to ignore, but my body betrays me with the smallest intake of breath. He must hear it because he turns toward me slightly, and for a moment our eyes meet in a way that feels different from every other time we have looked at each other over the past 3 years. There is something raw in his gaze, something vulnerable that he usually keeps carefully hidden behind his easy smile and casual confidence. His dark eyes search my face as though he is looking for permission or perhaps for the courage to voice whatever is churning inside him. We shouldn't do this. The words come out as barely more than a whisper, so quiet I almost wonder if I imagine them. His voice carries a weight I have never heard before, strained and rough around the edges. It is not really a statement, but a question disguised as a warning, a last desperate attempt to maintain the boundaries we have both been dancing around for months now. But even as he speaks the words, he does not move away. If anything, he leans closer, his shoulder brushing against my arm with deliberate pressure. I can feel the warmth of his skin through the thin cotton of his shirt, can sense the rapid rise and fall of his breathing. The contradiction between his words and his actions creates a tension so thick I feel as though I could reach out and touch it. I know what he means. We both know exactly what we shouldn't do, though neither of us has ever given it a name. We shouldn't cross the invisible line that has kept us safely in the territory of friendship for all these years. We shouldn't acknowledge the electricity that crackles between us when we sit too close, shouldn't examine the way our casual touches have begun to linger longer than they used to. We shouldn't risk everything we have built together, this easy companionship that has become the most important relationship in both our lives. We shouldn't complicate things by admitting that somewhere along the way, friendship stopped being enough. His breath is warm against my cheek now, uneven and shallow. I can see the conflict playing out across his features, the war between desire and fear, between want and the safety of pretending that want does not exist. His lips are slightly parted, and I find myself studying their shape, memorizing the curve of them in the amber light. The words say no, but everything else about this moment says something entirely different. The way he has angled his body toward mine, the way his eyes keep dropping to my mouth before darting away, the way he seems to be fighting against his own advice even as he offers it. I have spent so many nights wondering what this would feel like, this moment of recognition, of admission. I have imagined it would be sudden, dramatic, full of grand gestures and declarations. Instead, it feels like drowning in slow motion, like sinking beneath the surface of something vast and overwhelming, while part of me still struggles to breathe normally, to pretend that nothing fundamental is shifting between us. The silence that follows his warning is different from the comfortable quiet we usually share. This silence pulses with possibility, with the weight of a decision that neither of us has quite made yet, but that feels inevitable nonetheless. I can hear my own heartbeat in my ears, can feel the heat radiating from his body where it almost touches mine. Andre's hand moves slightly on his thigh, fingers uncurling as though he is about to reach for something, and I hold my breath waiting to see what he will do. The air between us feels charged, electric with the potential energy of a storm about to break. We shouldn't do this. His words echo in the space between us, but they have already begun to lose their power, already begun to sound more like a formality than a genuine deterrent. Because the truth is written in every line of his body, in every shallow breath. In a way he cannot quite bring himself to look away from me despite the danger he claims to see in staying close. The television continues its meaningless chatter. The lamp continues to cast its warm circle of light around us, and somewhere in the distance a car door slams. But these sounds belong to the world outside this moment, outside the bubble of tension and longing that has formed around us on this couch. I know that after tonight, nothing will be the same between us. I can feel it in the heaviness of the air, in the way time seems to have slowed down, in the careful way we are both breathing, as though any sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile thing is taking shape in the space between us. We shouldn't do this, but we're going to anyway. I've always been the easy one, the friend who says yes when everyone else makes excuses, who drives 40 minutes out of the way to pick up someone who needs a ride, who stays up until 3 in the morning listening to problems I cannot solve but somehow make lighter just by being present. People gravitate toward me not because I'm particularly charming or witty, but because I make things simple for them. I smooth over awkward silences, laugh at jokes that are not quite funny, and never ask for more than what is freely offered. It is a comfortable role, one that fits me like worn jeans. I have perfected the art of being available without being demanding, of caring deeply while keeping that care light enough that no one feels burdened by it. My friends text me at midnight when they need someone to talk them through a breakup or a family crisis or the crushing weight of existential doubt. I respond every time, grateful to be needed even when I am exhausted by the constant giving. But beneath all that practiced ease, there's something else. A restlessness that I rarely acknowledge, even in the privacy of my own thoughts. It lives in my chest like a small animal pacing in a cage, always moving, never quite settled. I feel it most acutely during those long drives home after dropping friends off, when the car falls silent and I am alone with the radio and the stretch of empty highway ahead of me. Sometimes I catch glimpses of it in mirrors, in the space between my practiced smile and my eyes. A hunger for something I cannot name, something that all my careful generosity and easy laughter cannot quite fill. I tell myself it is normal, this vague sense of wanting more, of waiting for my real life to begin. Everyone feels this way in their early 20s, caught between adolescence and whatever comes after, marking time until they figure out who they are supposed to become. Andre is different. He has always known exactly who he is, or at least he carries himself as though he does. Where I bend and adapt, he stands firm. Where I seek approval through accommodation, he earns respect through consistency. He is the friend who shows up when he says he will, who remembers birthdays without being reminded, who offers advice that is direct enough to sting but gentle enough to accept. We met during freshman orientation, thrown together in one of those forced icebreaker activities that most people endure with barely concealed misery. While everyone else fumbled through the awkward small talk, Andre approached the exercise with the same serious attention he brought to everything else. He asked thoughtful questions and listened to the answers with complete focus, as though each person he spoke to might have something genuinely important to share. I was drawn to that steadiness immediately. In a sea of 18-year-olds trying on different versions of themselves like costumes, Andre seemed to have already figured out which one fit. He was studying business with a minor in philosophy, planned to work for a few years before eventually starting his own company. Wanted to travel, but only after he had saved enough money to do it right. Everything mapped out, every goal connected to the next in a logical progression toward a future he could describe in precise detail. He collected friends the way other people collect books or music, carefully and with purpose. Each relationship served a function in the architecture of his life. There was Marcus for basketball and weekend adventures, Sarah for intellectual conversations about politics and literature, James for nights out and the kind of trouble that feels dangerous but is ultimately harmless. And then there was me, occupying a space that seemed to exist outside his usual categories. We fell into a rhythm of late-night conversations and spontaneous drives to nowhere in particular. I became the person he called when he needed to think out loud, when the careful structure of his planned life felt too constraining. He would show up at my door without warning, restless in a way that surprised us both, and we would end up driving for hours while he worked through whatever was bothering him. Our friendship developed an intensity that made other people uncomfortable. We spent more time together than seemed normal for two straight guys, talked on the phone every day, knew each other's schedules and habits with a kind of detailed familiarity usually reserved for romantic relationships. Friends would joke about it, calling us an old married couple, but we always laughed it off with the easy confidence of people who knew exactly where they stood with each other. Except that confidence was built on a foundation of things we never examined too closely. The way our conversations could stretch for hours without either of us noticing the time passing. The way we had developed our own language of inside jokes and shared references that excluded everyone else. The way physical contact between us had gradually increased over the months until it became completely natural for him to rest his arm along the back of my chair, or for me to lean against his shoulder when I was tired. Andre insisted on boundaries in every other aspect of his life, but with me those boundaries seemed to dissolve without either of us acknowledging their absence. We existed in a space that felt separate from the rest of the world, governed by rules we had never discussed but somehow both understood. Until tonight, when the weight of those unspoken rules finally became too much for the silence to contain. Until he spoke those words that acknowledged what we had been carefully not seeing, what we had been dancing around without admitting we were dancing at all. The restlessness in my chest has gone completely still now, replaced by something that feels like recognition. Like finally understanding the shape of the thing I have been waiting for without knowing I was waiting at all. It starts with something ridiculous, the way the most important moments of our lives often do. Andre makes a joke about the talk show host's haircut, something about how it looks like he stuck his finger in an electrical socket, and the comment is so unexpectedly stupid that I cannot help but laugh. Not the polite chuckle I usually offer when someone is trying to be funny, but genuine laughter that bubbles up from somewhere deep in my chest. He grins at my reaction, pleased with himself in a way that makes him look younger, and without thinking he reaches over and shoves my shoulder. It is the kind of casual contact we have shared thousands of times before, except tonight the touch lingers a fraction of a second too long, his palm warm against the cotton of my shirt. I shove him back, harder than necessary, and suddenly we are wrestling like teenagers, all elbows and breathless laughter as we try to gain leverage on the narrow couch. He is stronger than me, but I am quicker, and for a moment we are evenly matched, pushing and pulling with the kind of playful aggression that feels safe because it has clear rules and obvious boundaries. Except the boundaries are not as clear as they used to be. What starts as mock combat gradually slows into something else entirely. Andre manages to pin my wrists against the back of the couch, his weight pressing me into the leather cushions, and instead of immediately letting go the way he normally would, he stays there. His face hovers inches above mine, close enough that I can see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough that his breath mingles with mine in the space between us. The laughter dies in my throat. The television continues its meaningless chatter in the background, but the sound seems to come from very far away, as though someone has turned the volume down to almost nothing. Andre's grip on my wrists loosens, but he does not release them entirely, his fingers now resting against my pulse points with a gentleness that makes my heart race even faster. I should say something to break the tension, should make another joke, or suggest we get some water or comment on how late it has gotten. Instead, I find myself studying the line of his jaw, the way his dark hair falls across his forehead, the small scar on his chin from a childhood accident he told me about months ago. He is beautiful in the amber light, beautiful in a way I have never allowed myself to fully acknowledge. He must see something in my face, some recognition or admission that I am not quick enough to hide, because his expression shifts. The easy confidence that usually defines him falters, replaced by something raw and uncertain. His thumb brushes across my wrist, so lightly I might have imagined it, if not for the way the small contact sends electricity shooting up my arm. I realize I'm holding my breath, waiting for him to make the next move, to decide what this moment means and where it leads us. But Andre seems as frozen as I am, caught between desire and the safety of pretending this is still just two friends horsing around on a couch. The silence stretches until it becomes almost unbearable, heavy with the weight of things we are both afraid to name. I can feel the rapid rhythm of his heartbeat where his chest presses against mine, can see the struggle playing out in his eyes as he wars with himself about what he wants versus what he thinks he should want. This is when he should pull back, when he should laugh and make some comment about getting too old for wrestling matches. This is when he should create distance, should remind us both that he knows exactly who he is and what he wants, should reassert the boundaries that have kept us safely in the territory of friendship for so long. Instead, he leans closer, not dramatically, not with any sudden movement that might shatter the fragile spell that has settled over us, but gradually, as though he is being drawn by a gravity he cannot resist. His forehead almost touches mine, so close that I can feel the warmth of his skin, can count the individual lashes that frame his eyes. That is when he whispers it, those words that acknowledge what we both know and neither of us wants to face. We shouldn't do this. His voice shakes as he says it, rough with an emotion I have never heard from him before. It is not really a statement, but a question, a plea for me to give him permission to retreat, to pretend this moment never happened. But his hand remains pressed against my chest where my heart is hammering against my ribs, and he does not move away. If anything, the distance between us continues to shrink, as though his body is making decisions his mind cannot quite accept yet. I can see the fear in his eyes now, naked and vulnerable in a way that Andre never allows himself to be. But beneath the fear is something else, something that looks remarkably like longing. Like 3 years of careful friendship, finally giving way to the truth we have both been avoiding. The invitation is not spoken, but it lives in the silence between us, in the way he stays when every rational part of him must be screaming to pull back. It lives in the gentle pressure of his hand against my chest, in the way his gaze keeps dropping to my mouth before darting away again, in the careful way he is breathing as though any sudden movement might break whatever spell has fallen over us. We are balanced on the edge of something that cannot be undone, and we both know it. The morning after changes everything and nothing. We wake up on opposite ends of the couch, the television still murmuring its endless stream of infomercials and early morning news. Andre stirs first, blinking in the gray light filtering through the blinds, and for a moment I watch him remember where he is, watch the events of the previous night reassemble themselves in his consciousness. He sits up carefully, running a hand through his disheveled hair, and I pretend to be asleep until he disappears into the bathroom. When I hear the shower start, I finally allow myself to breathe properly for the first time since opening my eyes. Nothing happened, I tell myself. We fell asleep talking, that is all. Friends do that all the time. But the lie tastes bitter even in the privacy of my own thoughts, because something did happen in that moment when he leaned close enough for me to count his heartbeats, when his warning hung in the air between us like a bridge neither of us quite had the courage to cross. When he emerges from the bathroom, hair damp and wearing yesterday's clothes, he is Andre again. Composed, certain, the momentary vulnerability of last night packed away behind his usual easy confidence. He makes coffee without asking if I want any, moves around my kitchen with the casual familiarity of someone who has done this hundreds of times before. We don't talk about it. Not that morning, not in the days that follow. Instead, we slip back into our established routines with the careful precision of actors who know their lines by heart. He texts me about weekend plans. I respond with the same enthusiasm I always have. We meet for lunch between classes, argue about whether the Lakers have any chance this season, complain about professors and assignments, and all the mundane details that make up the architecture of friendship. But something has shifted beneath the surface of all that normalcy. I notice it in the way he looks at me now, quick glances that linger a fraction of a second too long before he catches himself and looks away. I feel it in the quality of silence when our conversations pause, as though the air itself has become thicker, more charged with possibility. The casual touches we use to share without thinking have taken on new weight. When he reaches past me to grab something from the top shelf in the library, his arm brushes my shoulder, and I feel the contact like an electric shock. When I hand him his coffee and our fingers accidentally touch around the cup, he pulls back as though he's been burned, but not quickly enough to hide the way his breath catches. We start finding excuses to extend our time together. Study sessions that could easily be completed in an hour stretch into entire afternoons. When I mention needing to run errands, he offers to come along for no reason he can articulate. Movie nights that used to end at reasonable hours somehow always seem to require one more film, one more conversation about the ending, one more reason to avoid saying goodbye. I catch myself memorizing details about him that I never paid attention to before. The way he drums his fingers against his thigh when he is thinking through a problem. The small scar on his knuckle from working in his father's garage last summer. The particular shade of brown his eyes become in lamplight, warmer and softer than they appear in the harsh fluorescent lighting of classrooms. He still insists he is straight when the topic comes up in group conversations. When Marcus makes some joke about gaydar, or when Sarah mentions a friend who just came out, Andre participates in the discussion with the same casual comfort he always has, secure in his heterosexuality in a way that never seems forced or defensive. But I notice now how he avoids meeting my eyes during these conversations, how his voice carries just the slightest edge of something that might be uncertainty. The current that has always existed between us, the thing we never named because we never had to, has become impossible to ignore. It builds in the space between words, in the careful way we position ourselves when we sit together, in the deliberate distance we maintain, even as every instinct pulls us closer. I find myself analyzing every interaction, searching for signs that I am not imagining this shift, that the tension I feel crackling between us is real and not just the product of my own wishful thinking. When he texts me late at night, just to ask what I am doing, I stare at the message for long minutes before responding, trying to decode some hidden meaning in the simple question. There are moments when I am certain he feels it too, like when we were walking across campus, and he suddenly goes quiet, lost in thought, and I catch him watching me with an expression I cannot quite read. Or when we're studying together, and he reaches for a book at the same moment I do, our hands colliding over the spine, and instead of pulling away immediately, he lets his fingers rest against mine for just a beat too long. But then he will make some comment about the girl from his economics class, how pretty she looked today, and the moment dissolves like sugar in water, leaving me wondering if I imagined it all. Andre has always been methodical about his life, approaching each decision with the careful consideration of someone who believes that planning and discipline can protect him from unwanted complications. But discipline, I am beginning to understand, only works when you know what you're trying to resist. And increasingly, I'm not sure he knows anymore. It happens on a Tuesday night in March, 3 weeks after that first moment on the couch when everything began to unravel. We are in my apartment again, ostensibly working on a paper for the comparative literature class we both decided to take this semester. The assignment sits abandoned on my coffee table, pages of notes scattered around 2 laptops that have gone dark from disuse. We have been sitting in silence for the better part of an hour, the kind of quiet that used to feel comfortable but now pulses with all the things we refuse to say. Andre is curled into the corner of the couch, one leg tucked beneath him, pretending to read a book about postmodern narrative structure that I know he finished days ago. I'm sprawled on the floor, back against the couch, close enough that if I tilted my head back it would rest against his knee. The silence has weight tonight, pressing down on us like humidity before a storm. Every small sound seems amplified in the stillness. The turn of a page, the soft whisper of fabric when one of us shifts position, the careful rhythm of breathing that has become synchronized without either of us noticing. I can feel his attention on me, even though he is staring determinately at his book, can sense the way his focus keeps drifting from the words on the page to the back of my head. The awareness is maddening, like an itch I cannot scratch, and finally I cannot stand it anymore. I turn around, meaning to say something light about how we should probably actually get some work done, but the words die before they reach my lips. He is looking at me with an expression so raw, so full of longing and confusion, that it takes my breath away. The book slips from his fingers and lands forgotten on the cushions beside him. For a moment, we just stare at each other, the pretense finally stripped away, all our careful defenses crumbling under the weight of honesty. I can see everything he has been trying to hide written across his features. The want, the fear, the desperate hope that somehow this will all make sense if he just waits long enough. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable, until one of us has to break it or we will both suffocate under its pressure. I hear myself ask the question that has been building in my chest for weeks, the words coming out quieter than I intended, but carrying more weight than I knew I possessed. Then why don't you move away? It is not an accusation, though it could be. It is not a challenge, though it feels like one. It is simply the truth laid bare between us, the acknowledgement of what we both know but have been too afraid to name. If he truly believes we shouldn't do this, if he genuinely wants to maintain the boundaries that have kept us safely in the territory of friendship, then why does he keep finding reasons to be close? Why does he linger in doorways when he should leave? Why does he text me at 2 a.m. just to ask if I am awake? The question hangs in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore or wave away. Andre's face goes through a series of emotions so quickly I can barely track them. Surprise, then panic, then something that looks almost like relief, as though he has been waiting for someone to finally ask what he has been too afraid to ask himself. He opens his mouth as if to offer some explanation, some rational justification for his behavior that will preserve the fiction we have both been clinging to. But no words come out. Instead, he just sits there looking at me with those dark eyes that have become so familiar I could draw them from memory. The silence that follows is different from all the others we have shared. This one thrums with possibility, with the electric potential of a decision that is about to be made. I watch him struggle with it, see the moment when his careful composure finally cracks and lets something true slip through. He leans forward then, slowly, as though he is moving through water. His forehead comes to rest against mine, so gently that I barely feel the contact at first. But then the warmth of his skin registers, and the careful way he is breathing, and the fact that he is close enough that I can see the individual lashes that frame his eyes. His voice, when he finally speaks, is barely more than a whisper. So quiet, I have to strain to hear it over the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. The words come out broken, fragmented by the weight of what they mean. Because I don't want to. The admission hits me like a physical blow. Not because it hurts, but because it is so exactly what I needed to hear, what some part of me has been hoping for without daring to believe it might be possible. 5 simple words that destroy every careful boundary we have built between us, that acknowledge the truth we have both been dancing around for months. He doesn't want to move away, doesn't want to maintain the distance that keeps us safe, doesn't want to pretend anymore that this intensity between us is just friendship, just 2 guys who happen to enjoy each other's company more than seems entirely normal. The words break everything open. All the careful pretense, all the practiced denial, all the years of hiding behind the comfortable fiction that we know exactly who we are and what we want from each other. In the space of a breath, everything we thought we understood about ourselves and each other becomes irrelevant. His forehead remains pressed against mine, warm and solid and real, and I realize that we are both trembling. Time moves differently in the moments that follow his confession. Each second stretches like taffy, thick and golden and impossibly sweet. His forehead remains pressed against mine, our breath mingling in the small space between us, and I can feel the tremor that runs through him as the weight of his words settles into the silence. Because I don't want to. The admission hangs in the air like a bridge finally built across the chasm we have been circling for months. But bridges, I realize, require someone to take the first step, to trust that the structure will hold under the weight of what comes next. Andre's face hovers inches from mine, close enough that I can see the flecks of gold scattered through his dark irises, close enough that the warmth of his skin has become indistinguishable from my own. His eyes are wide with something that looks like wonder mixed with terror, as though he cannot quite believe the words came out of his mouth, but is simultaneously grateful that they did. He could still retreat. Even now, even after the confession that has stripped away every careful pretense between us, he could still find a way to laugh it off, to claim he meant something else entirely. He could stand up and create distance, could make some excuse about how late it has gotten or how much work he still has to finish. He could rebuild the boundaries we have just demolished and pretend this moment never happened. But he doesn't move. If anything, he seems frozen in place, caught between the safety of retreat and the terrifying possibility of moving forward. I can see the conflict playing out in his expression, the war between desire and fear that has been raging beneath the surface of our friendship for longer than either of us wants to admit. I understand, then, that this decision cannot be his alone, that for all his usual confidence and certainty, Andre needs permission to want what he wants, needs someone else to take responsibility for crossing the line he has spent so much energy maintaining. The realization fills me with a tenderness so acute it is almost painful, this glimpse of vulnerability from someone who has always seemed so sure of himself. I move slowly, giving him time to pull away if that is what he chooses. My hand finds the back of his neck, fingers threading through the soft hair at his nape, and the contact send a shiver through both of us. His skin is warm beneath my palm, and I can feel the rapid pulse of blood just beneath the surface. The touch is not force but invitation, not demand but permission. It says what words cannot quite capture in this moment. That it is okay to want this. That the fear is understandable but not insurmountable. That whatever happens next, we will figure it out together. Andre's eyes flutter closed at the contact, and a sound escapes him that is part relief and part surrender. When he opens them again, something fundamental has shifted in his gaze. The careful guardedness that has defined him for as long as I have known him has dissolved, replaced by an openness that makes my chest tight with emotion. He moves toward me then, not with the sudden urgency I might have expected, but with deliberate slowness, as though he wants to memorize every moment of this crossing. His hand comes up to rest against my cheek, thumb brushing across my skin with a gentleness that belies the tremor in his fingers. The kiss, when it finally happens, is nothing like the desperate collision I imagine it might be. Instead, it is soft and tentative, a question posed in the language of lips and breath. His mouth moves against mine with careful uncertainty, as though he is learning a new vocabulary and wants to make sure he understands each word before moving on to the next. I can taste the nervousness on his tongue, mixed with something sweeter that might be hope. Can feel the way his entire body is taut with the effort of maintaining control, of not letting years of suppressed want overwhelm the tenderness of this first contact. There's trembling in both of us now, subtle but unmistakable, the kind of shaking that comes not from cold, but from the recognition that some thresholds, once crossed, change everything that comes after. We are both acutely aware that this kiss is not just physical contact, but transformation, the moment when we stop being one thing and begin the process of becoming something else entirely. When we finally break apart, it is only by inches, our foreheads still touching, breath still mingling in the warm space between us. Andre's eyes remain closed, as though he is afraid that opening them might make this moment disappear like a dream upon waking. I study his face in the amber light from the corner lamp, memorizing the way peace looks on his features, the way the constant tension he carries in his jaw has finally relaxed. This is Andre without his armor, without the careful construction of certainty that he presents to the world. This is who he becomes when he allows himself to want something without immediately analyzing whether that wanting is acceptable or logical or safe. Neither of us speaks. Words feel inadequate after what has just passed between us, too small to contain the magnitude of what we have acknowledged. Instead, we sit in the golden silence of the late hour, foreheads pressed together, hands still touching skin, both of us understanding that we have just crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. The television continues its endless murmur in the background, and somewhere outside a car, door slams in the distance. But these sounds belong to another world entirely. Here, in this circle of warm light, there is only the two of us and the weight of a truth finally spoken, finally acted upon. Everything has changed, and neither of us wants to go back. We sit side by side in the aftermath, not speaking, not moving apart. The kiss has ended, but its echo remains in the air between us, in the way our breathing has synchronized, in the careful distance we no longer feel compelled to maintain. The couch cushions have grown warm beneath us, molded to the shape of our bodies after hours of sitting in the same positions, as though the furniture itself has become complicit in our transformation. Andre's hand finds mine somewhere in the space between us, fingers intertwining with a deliberateness that speaks to decision rather than accident. His palm is slightly damp with perspiration, and I can feel the faint tremor that still runs through him, the physical manifestation of everything that has shifted in the past hour. But his grip is steady, certain in a way that his voice was not when he whispered his confession. The television continues its endless cycle of late-night programming. Voices drifting from the speakers in a language that feels foreign now, belonging to the world we inhabited before this moment changed the fundamental coordinates of our friendship. A commercial for some kitchen appliance plays out in cheerful primary colors, the kind of aggressive normalcy that feels surreal after the intimacy we have just shared. Neither of us reaches for the remote. The background noise provides a kind of cover, a buffer against the silence that might otherwise feel too heavy to navigate. We exist in the space between the public world of television and advertisements and the private world we have just created through admission and touch and the courage to finally stop pretending we don't want what we want. His thumb moves across my knuckles in small, unconscious circles, and I realize this is the first time we have touched each other with complete honesty. Every other contact over the past 3 years has been filtered through the careful choreography of heterosexual male friendship, brief and casual, and designed to maintain the fiction that physical affection between us was purely platonic. This touch is different, intentional. It carries the weight of acknowledgement, of choice made and accepted. His hand in mine says what words have not yet found the courage to express. That the kiss was not an accident or a moment of weakness. That whatever we are becoming, we are choosing to become it together. I study his profile in the amber light, the way shadows pool beneath his cheekbones, the familiar line of his jaw that I have memorized without meaning to over countless evenings spent exactly like this. Except not like this at all, because everything has changed even as everything appears to remain the same. Andre's breathing has settled into the deeper rhythm that means he is thinking, processing, working through the implications of what we have just done. I know him well enough to recognize the signs of internal calculation, the way he approaches any significant decision by examining it from every possible angle. But for once, his analysis seems to be leading him toward acceptance rather than retreat. When he finally speaks, his voice is quieter than usual, rough around the edges with emotion he is still learning how to express. The words come slowly, as though he is testing each one before allowing it into the space between us. I keep thinking about what he said, about why I don't move away. He pauses, thumb still tracing those small circles against my hand, and I wait for him to find his way to whatever truth he is excavating from the tangle of his thoughts. I think part of me has been waiting for someone to ask that question for a long time, to call me on all the ways I've been lying to myself about what I want. The admission hangs in the air with the weight of years behind it, all the careful constructions he has built around his identity, all the boundaries he has insisted upon to keep himself safely within the parameters of who he thought he was supposed to be. His earlier words echo in the space between us now, taking on new meaning in the context of everything that has followed. We shouldn't do this. But the warning has been transformed by action into something more like recognition, an acknowledgement of consequence rather than a true deterrent. The clock on the wall ticks toward 3 in the morning, marking time in a world that will wake up tomorrow expecting us to be the same people we were yesterday. But we both understand now that those people no longer exist, that they dissolved somewhere between his whispered confession and the press of his lips against mine. Andre shifts slightly, turning toward me on the couch, and for the first time in hours we are looking directly at each other without the buffer of books or television or the careful choreography of casual conversation. His eyes hold mine with a steadiness that feels like courage, like someone who has finally decided to stop running from himself. Whatever happens next, I know this moment will remain. The weight of his hand in mine, warm and slightly trembling but holding on. The golden light that makes everything feel suspended outside of ordinary time. The quiet hum of appliances and distant traffic that grounds us in the physical world, even as we navigate territory that feels entirely uncharted. Tomorrow we will have to figure out what this means, how to exist in a world that still thinks it knows who we are when we are no longer entirely sure ourselves. We will have to find language for what we have become. We'll have to learn how to be this version of ourselves in daylight and in the presence of others who remember us as we used to be. But those challenges belong to tomorrow. Tonight, we sit in the amber circle of lamplight, hands intertwined, neither speaking nor moving apart. The television murmurs its endless commentary on a world that feels very far away and somewhere beyond the walls of this apartment. The city continues its restless motion through the small hours of morning. Here, in this moment, there is only the quiet weight of truth finally spoken and the warmth of connection finally acknowledged. Neither of us wants it to end.